He is a former Navy SEAL. He has just finished an exoneration, which we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about Soros-funded prosecutors, and we're also going to talk about the resolution introduced calling on the Department of Justice and Attorney General Barr to investigate cash payments that were made to people who made false allegations against him. He was a recipient as a Navy SEAL of the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and had 4 deployments as well. He's a Rhodes Scholar, and my gosh, I don't even know if I belong in the same broadcast with this guy. I want to welcome former Governor Eric Greitens. Eric, it is an honor, sir, to have you on my program. Thank you.
Pastor, it is so good to be on with you, and so good to be on with all of your listeners. I'm really excited to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we were talking, in the green room. We were talking a little bit about, victims of the deep state and these kinds of witch hunts. Obviously, I lost a dear friend that we talked about, Phil Haney, on Friday. Our president has been through this. Rick Gates went through this. Roger Stone, who I got connected to a couple of weeks ago, going through this. Manafort, anybody connected, Carter Page, right? Anybody connected to the president, basically anybody that has the kind of ideology that obviously you have, was attacked by these kinds of really deep state operatives. Tell us how this began.
Well, Pastor, really this began because I ran as a conservative outsider in 2016. I had never been involved in politics before. As you mentioned, I'd been a Navy SEAL. I did 4 deployments in the global war on terrorism. I'd come home after my team was hit by a suicide truck bomb, and I'd set up a nationwide organization to help wounded and disabled veterans come home. So when I ran for office, it was a tremendous threat to the political establishment. And I ran as a conservative outsider. And I was very clear that I was pro-police, I was pro-life, I was pro-Second Amendment, and that we were going to go and we were going to kill politicians' pay raises. We're going to slam shut the revolving door between lobbyists and the executive branch. We were going to fight for the people who sent us into office. And I got to tell you, Pastor, when we started, nobody gave us a chance. Nobody gave us a chance. But we came in from the outside. We had this tremendous grassroots movement. People came together, and they brought us into office. And then I think what really shocked the establishment was that we did everything we promised we were going to do. So on our first day in office, we signed an executive order that banned all gifts from lobbyists. And that very same day, we slammed shut the revolving door between the executive branch and lobbyists. We killed a politician's pay raise. And all of your listeners will also remember that Ferguson, Missouri, was
I was just going to bring that up. That was the whole hands up, don't shoot. Michael Brown, which was tagged to the Trayvon Martin issue, and we've had actually here on the program Joel Gilbert, who is the man who put together the documentary about the Trayvon hoax.
Well, and it is so yeah, exactly. And all of your listeners are gonna remember this was kind of ground zero at Ferguson, right? For this big anti-police movement. And I came into office. I absolutely stood behind our law enforcement officers. We let them know that we were behind them, that we were behind their families. And in 2017, when I was in office, and we had another incident where a St. Louis police officer had shot and killed an African-American man, you saw, again, activists from around the country poured into the state, and they said that they were going to burn the place to the ground. Some of them said, you won't even remember Ferguson. It's going to be so bad. And I came in with my team, and I said, look, we're going to protect everyone's constitutional rights. We're going to protect the rights to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Those are constitutional rights that every American has. But we were also very clear that throwing a brick through a window is not free speech. that if you assault a law enforcement officer, you're going to jail. And we said very clearly, because last time they'd given people space to loot and to burn, we said that today, as when I'm in office, if you loot or burn, the only safe space you're going to have is in a jail cell. And that upset national liberals across the country. And there was a prosecutor in St. Louis who is funded over 70% by George Soros. And she was really behind all of this.
And so they falsely charged you with
They falsely
invasion of with the very thing. Again, this is so leftist,
Yes.
but with the very thing that they did repeatedly, whether it was Carter Page or Rick Gates or Dr. Jerome Corsi or Paul Manafort or the president himself, right? When they went and they were spying on him while they were talking to him, they actually had someone in the room that was there to spy on the president.
And this is why it's so important for all of your listeners to know what's good about what has happened in Missouri is that the Left Playbook has been exposed. So yes, you had a Soros-funded prosecutor who charged me for crime with no evidence. She said herself in court to the judge that I charged him with a crime, and now I'm going to go and look for the evidence. It is a terrible thing to do, where they weaponize the judicial system, and they do this with taxpayer money, and they try to drive your family into bankruptcy. The good news in Missouri is that this woman, Kim Gardner, who did this, her lead investigator, a former FBI agent named William Tisby, Gardner is already under criminal investigation herself, and her lead investigator has already been indicted for 7 felonies for manufacturing a false case against me. 6 counts of perjury, 1 felony count of evidence tampering. So again, the good news for your listeners is that people see all of these things happening across the country. In Missouri, the Left Playbook has been exposed, and it looks like the first person who did this to try and overturn the results of the 2016 election, we may actually have the first person go to prison for doing so. Right?
Okay, so when we look at, because there's news coming out that the Republicans in the House are actually going to push for the prosecution of those that were involved in this witch hunt against the president.
That's exactly right, Pastor. And that's what happened in Missouri. We had a witch hunt where you had a former FBI agent who was brought in, manufactured this false case. Now he's been charged with 7 felonies, and it is a direct parallel to what's happening at the national level, where you have Republicans who are now saying it looks like we're going to make a criminal referral for the people who manufactured this false Russia collusion hoax.
Sure.
And another parallel is that in Missouri, we now know that there were people who were paid at least $120,000 in cash to make false accusations. And a lot of times, people around the country say, well, the left doesn't really play like that. They don't do that. Like, we have proof in Missouri. They pay people cash to make false accusations.
All right. To that point, then,
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. As you now have watched this unfold and seen the playbook of the left exposed in such a way, I know that they are, and Soros has made it very clear, he is funding the campaigns of prosecutors and DAs at a local level all over the country. What do we need to do? What can we do in order to turn the tide?
Well, first of all, Pastor, we need to do the work that you are doing, and we need to assist you and other people to spread the word about the left's playbook. Right? We've now exposed what the left's playbook is. They will weaponize the judicial system. They will pay people cash to make false statements. They will work with the fake news to then amplify all of these false charges. They will abuse the system of investigation to try and wreck people financially. This is the left's playbook, and we have to patriotic Americans across the country know exactly what that playbook is. And then the other thing that we have to do, Pastor, is we have to go out and we have to make sure that we defeat socialism in November and that we reelect President Trump. I mean, when you've got a guy like Bernie Sanders openly saying that he admires what happens in Cuba, I can tell you from my personal experience here in Missouri, a Soros-funded prosecutor will charge you with a crime and have you arrested because of your political beliefs, because they don't like you. So there is a threat on the horizon, and people across the country need to recognize the Left Playbook, stand up, and defeat them.
Now, there are people out there, like, for example, Rick Gates, Roger Stone. I mean, I spoke with Roger, and he said, you know, Pastor, I'm homeless, carless, penniless, and familyless. I mean, I'm destitute, basically, because of what they've done to me. How do we fight that kind of wickedness? What did you do differently that allowed you to get this victory?
Well, first of all, you know, I always had faith. I always had faith that eventually the truth would come out. And I am glad now to have been exonerated. There was a Missouri Ethics Commission report, an exhaustive report over the course of 20 months that said that they found no evidence of any wrongdoing on our part. So we kept that faith alive. And that was one of the most important.
We're going to take a break.
You bet.
When we come back, I want to delve a little bit deeper into that because, as you said, you know, people need to understand that this could happen to anyone and potentially is going to happen to individuals like yourself, like me, who step up and make our voices heard and make our voices count for liberty for all. And we want to hear how to battle that fight, how to fight that good fight, and how you won in that fight. We'll be back with more Chosen Generation Radio right after this.